Hello and welcome to this episode of MFA. My name is Frandika, and today I permanently left my life in the world of the living to live in the spirit world and spend the rest of my days the murderous spirit woman of the lake who haunts fishermen and drowns them to death.
Hi, my name is Carmen, and today I fucked the angel that appeared to me to announce the second coming of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Um, and welcome to this week's meeting of Monster Fuckers Anonymous. Pew, pew, pew.
Woo!
Uh, this week we'll be talking about Zuko from
Much loved Prince.
the much loved prince of the acclaimed comedy, children's comedic animated TV series, Avatar the Last Airbender.
And also a social commentary on genocide and war and
Yes.
imperialism.
I think this kind of rounds out our first episode, which was about Azula. I think now that Randika has had time to watch all of Avatar, it's time to fully discuss the siblings, and in this case, the second sibling, which is Zuko.
Yeah. Zuko is a very complex character, and that's what I really like about him. Like, both him and Azula are very complicated, and the way that the abuse by their father has impacted them in like very different ways. We can see with Azula and also with Zuko.
Yeah.
But Zuko,
I-
on the other hand, had a constant source of love in his life, unlike Azula.
Yes. I think it's really interesting to look at them. They're honestly like two of the most interesting characters in the show. Like, obviously, like I care about Aang and Katara and Toph and Sokka, but I think if I had to name favorite characters, it'd probably be like Azula, Katara, Toph, Zuko, and then after that it's like Sokka, Suki, and like other like less major characters like Ty Lee and Mai and stuff. But
I love Xylee, but that's another.
um but yeah, I don't know, it's like they made him very interesting. They made him very like kind of, I don't know, you get wrapped up in Zuko's storyline because it is a very interesting storyline to get wrapped up in. And I think that's where a lot of Azula hate stems from, is because they made Zuko's narrative arc so much more like moving, fleshed out for one, and like more moving and more interesting, and like just displayed more of it, that if they had done the same to Azula, I think she would be getting, I mean, also misogyny still plays a part, but I think if Azula had been given that kind of like, here's Azula's entire life, we would not be having the same conversation today.
I think the thing with Zuko is he's seen as like a foil character a little bit for Aang, because I know when I was watching season 2, I just saw a lot of parallels between what Zuko was going through and what Aang is going through. So I think Aang was not Aang. I mean, Zuko was always meant to be like the foil version of Aang, and like Azula is the villain, so we don't really get like the fully fleshed out story of hers. But we do get a little piece of it in like the last episode, the season finale. But imagine if we got more of that. But this isn't about Azula.
Yeah, well, we can always just a little bit. Like, yeah, I think it's interesting when you compare notes. I think the most interesting comparison of notes happens in the show at like the Ember Island episode, when it's like Zuko like actually has something to say about his own past and trauma, and like how he's trying to rebuild his life, and Azula's like, my own mother thought I was a monster, and she wasn't wrong.
She was right.
And it's like, yes, she said that. In fact, she did.
She really did that.
But yeah, I don't know. It's like no one was telling Zuko that he was a monster. His dad was telling him.
Showered with love.
Yeah, his dad was telling him that
dad.
he was a yeah. So his dad was telling him that he was a failure, which is a big thing.
He really pushed this like competitive spirit between him and Azula, because Azula was like the prodigy, like the really good firebender, and like Zuko is like the son, so like I feel like typically like the son is the one to inherit the empire, and so if he isn't as talented, if he's like not as good as firebending, he needs to like his sister now turns into his enemy because he has to beat her to like win his
Yeah,
father's love and approval so he can become the Fire Lord.
exactly. There's a lot of like unspoken because they never discuss it, but there's a lot of unspoken like I guess crisis of masculinity in Zuko's storyline, which is why I think that they lean so heavily on like I need my honor back. It's because like he is not seen as enough by his father. He's less than his sister, which he like
Yes.
he's younger,
Exactly. Yes.
but he is younger, but he's going to inherit the throne because Azula is not a man and she's not an only child.
Yes.
Um, I'm celebrating becoming an only
Only that
child.
was like so funny. Like
She's
I don't understand why people are like, "Grr, grr, grr, grr." Isn't that funny? Like that's
yeah.
hilarious.
Didn't you laugh? Yeah. So it's like he wasn't enough. He was less than his sister, and then
He feels emasculated.
he feels emasculated. But then the third thing is he I think spoke up against his father in a war meeting or something, and then his father challenged him to a fucking Agni Kai. Like
His dad is crazy.
which if you I don't know if for people who even are fans of the show, you might not know this, but Agni Kais originally were fights to the death. And eventually they
Yeah.
became just like fight to the end, which is kind of like
When he dropped.
when whoever kind of like wrestling kind of used to be like fight to the death style, like
Yeah.
gladiator style, and then it became like whoever gets knocked out or whatever. But then like his father was really going in for the kill of like I'm gonna fucking kill my own son if he can't stand it. And it's like
So you were grooming your son to like be your inherit I don't know the word, like inherit like all of
air.
your
Yeah.
heir, yes, exactly. And then now you're like, okay, time to kill him. Like
Yeah.
what kind of twisted mind games is that?
It
Like,
just
ugh.
it's so like it just is not even real. Um so yeah, honestly, it's like nasty, it's disgusting, it's vile. And then he's like, but it's your fault. And then Zuko spends the next like 2 seasons trying to get his honor back by getting his father's approval. And then he finally realizes his father's approval isn't worth shit because his father's like awful and like
And
doesn't
like
even hold himself to his own standards.
the world he has, like when he has everything, I really like that. Like, obviously, yeah, spoilers. In like season 3, he gets everything he wanted, and he realized like I've been
Nope.
craving this for so long,
And it's not
and
even
like
fucking worth it.
not what I want. And also, I feel like his dad blames him for like his mom like going
Yeah.
away. Like his
Yeah.
dad is like, you messed everything up, when really it's Ozai who messed everything up.
Yeah. Ozai and his father, who is like, I'm gonna kill your firstborn because you don't know what pain feels like. Which like again, just like twisted family dynamics, like
Yeah, they are. I mean, Ozai is obviously terrible and insidious and blah blah blah. Like Ursa
Yeah.
sucks in her own way. Like they were just raised by like two like terrible parents.
Yeah. But Zuko did have Ursa's love and affection while she was there.
Mhm.
And then as soon as she was gone, basically, Uncle Iroh began to fulfill that role of like parent to Zuko
And
in
Iroh.
that
Oh wait, you go.
in that like he wasn't necessarily I think he maybe started to be around previous to Zuko's banishment, but it wasn't long between like when Zuko's mom left and then when um Zuko was banished. And so then like Uncle Iroh becomes the main figure who's raising him also on this like trip to catch the Avatar or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, which we thank him for because Uncle Iroh is the single best character that
Iroh had to deal with
Aaron E has
all of
in.
this shit. He's like,
Yeah,
all right, here my son, not my son. Yeah, I'll say son. Here my son goes again. And I like that
yeah,
Iroh, like even though Iroh is a war criminal, he he is more of like this like in a sense like a little more of like the spiritual and like softer side of masculinity. Like
yeah,
I really liked how like Zuko like after his uncle was after Iroh was in prison, he was like, what would Iroh say? And then he like gets on this like pompous voice and like says all these
yeah,
like poetic things. And it's like very interesting to see like
yeah.
first we have Ozai who's like this domineering, like no emotions kind of
Sadistic.
father
Yeah,
to him. And then we have Iroh who's like teaching him like life lessons and spirituality and all of this stuff. It's like a
yeah,
very diametrically opposed form of like parenting for Zuko, and he learns that
Yeah.
that's what he needed all along.
Yeah, and that there's like more to life than like fighting and getting your honor back because he
Yeah,
finds satisfaction in so many just natural things. Like he's like, oh yes, I play, like I sing with my band on the crew, that I like, I
yeah,
eat good food, I drink good tea, and it's like, I develop a relationship with my nephew, and like that's all very important to me. And he's like kind of like by doing showing Zuko what he should be doing, and I think that they spend so much time together that by the time that Zuko does go out on his own, he's like, wow, like I've learned so many life lessons from him,
yeah,
because he was never trying to explicitly teach him. He was just like he was just showing him what the world looks like when you perform in different ways. um I think that's really powerful. But yeah, I don't know, it's just like he's like very like grow a garden type of person. Like you can teach a man to fish or you can give him a fish, and he's like, why not both?
yeah,
And he's like, it's just so evident because like Zuko, in the toughest of trials and tribulations, always is the only reason he survives is because of his grandfather or his uncle. And that's like season one when he's almost killed by the pirates under
yeah.
General Zhao's orders, like um everything that follows after that. Then they escape together and like they survive living in the Earth Kingdom colonies. Um, and then they like they go on their own ways and stuff. But it's just very interesting to see them like their relationship develop, and like how much they like rely on each other, but specifically like how Zuko relies on Iroh and like becomes a better person through his their interactions.
Yeah, it's very beautiful, and like it just shows that like Zuko needed all along, and like also that he was like forced to exist in this very like talk like the Fire Kingdom is like Fire Kingdom under like oh like the like his family was very just like toxic and
Yeah,
like very oppressive, and like Zuko needed to be free. He needed to express himself, and he needed
yeah.
that
He actually benefited from being
alone.
exiled
Yeah,
because he was not exposed to the constant like toxicity of the Fire Nations, especially like the
yeah, also
elites.
that.
Because Mai and Ty Lee cannot do for Azula what Iroh has done for Zuko, because they are wrapped up in that same environment and they are
And their
not allowed
children.
freedom. Well, and their children, but like if I think if Azula had had those friends and they had been able to create a healthy environment for each other, then it could have functioned similarly to how like Iroh is teaching Zuko. It could have been like a world where Azula gets to be herself and Azula gets to be whoever she is without the interference of her father's identity.
Yeah.
But because there is no world for her to exist in that isn't immediately occupied first by her father's identity and then her own, there's like no chance for her to recuperate herself. And so like Zuko gets to develop an entire identity because he's in exile. But like
Yeah.
Mai and Ty Lee don't develop these identities until they one are also on their own, because it's them and Azula go on their like trip to hunt the Avatar together, so they start to develop their own identities, all three of them. But then they're again separated from Azula, so they're separated from their last ties to the Fire Nation, and then that's when they start to realize, hey, things are kind of fucked up, and then ultimately leading towards, I think, the imprisonment thing, the
Yeah.
jail, and then like they like join forces with the Kyoshi warriors and like become like cool people and like
I love
recognize
it
the errors
so
of their
much.
ways and stuff, and it's
Yeah.
like it's something that like you weren't expecting to happen because Mai is like a very like bleh
Like
person. Like
very
she's very
she just
emo.
doesn't care.
Yeah, apathetic. And like she's like barely blinks an eye when like something violent happens because she's like, wow, this place is so boring. And then Ty Lee is kind of the opposite of like everything's fun to her, so she doesn't
Yeah.
really see like the dramatic terribleness of the world that she's living in, because she just gets to
Yeah.
like live in a circus instead of like seeing like the violence that the Fire Nation is perpetrating
Exactly. Yeah.
against the Earth Kingdom like daily.
Yeah. Those kids are just like Zuko was just surrounded by violence, and he got to not exist in that anymore, which is like very good and healthy for him. And I'm very glad for him.
I think it's also interesting to look at like boy kings and their success um, in media is almost always dependent on them not actually being in their kingdom for the duration of their
Like
like
who?
Bildungsroman period, like their like adolescent like growing up period.
Mhm.
um like I just I can't think of any specific examples right now, but I just feel like every single like boy that becomes king or like kind of storyline is always like, especially if it's like a hidden prince, like a prince that doesn't know he's a prince, like Harry Potter, for example, doesn't know he's a wizard until he's 11, and then he like is like only temporarily transported into the wizarding world, and so I
Oh
hate
wait,
Harry Potter.
I feel like I have like an example for like a prince.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if you listen to the podcast The Two Princes, but
I know that I'm familiar with the storyline.
yeah. So like the guy, like the prince, he like goes on this journey and quest by himself, like
Yeah,
away from like his mother. So he learns like who he is and how he can exist on his own, and then he ends up like ruling like a small kingdom. So like
yeah,
it's true. You have to
right,
like, cause like when you are a, like royalty or a prince or whatever, you have like you are really pressured by like your parents and like the authority figures in your life, and you really need to be alone to understand who you are outside of the context of your parents and how you will translate your personality and your identity into the way you rule.
yeah, and also to properly rule, you must know your subjects and like the
Exactly.
political world that you live in, and I think um like I said, with like a lot of other examples of like hidden princes or like lost princes, where they eventually like assume power after a period of extended absence, or um, like for example, like the kingdom is dethroned, and then the prince like lives in hiding or whatever for a number of years, and then they like restore the kingdom. Then that prince is, I mean, it's just a trope that I've noticed before. Like that person that is able to like have gleaned all this knowledge of like what people are like. I guess it's also in The Witcher too, with like Princess Cirilla, so that's a princess.
Yeah,
But it's like,
that's in Dragon Age too with uh the in like the first game there's like Alistair and like he's like the bastard son, so he doesn't like
yeah,
live in the royal family, like he like does other stuff and then he can assume the throne.
yeah.
So
So you see like poverty, you see like village communities, you see like all sorts of political realities, and you realize that things aren't going to be the same as they are in the palace, because the palace is a very different place. And
yeah,
so,
because you aren't sheltered because so
right,
many like royal children are like sheltered from everything. So
yeah,
like once that like veil is lifted, you're like, wow, the world is a terrible place.
yeah,
And when you're on your own, because Azula, she the veil was lifted for her, but she was like with the Fire Nation, so she had a like
yeah.
objective. So she
She
wasn't
was
able to
heading a
see like
ship, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
a
So she
team of
wasn't able
people,
to see like
yeah,
the errors of the world because like her main focus is like filling out her father's like
right,
whatever plan or
right,
whatever. But Zuko, like he didn't have any plan to fill. He was just like kind of on the run, so he got to see like, wow, this sucks. Like
right. Yeah, plus Zuko had been on his own for several years previous to the like the journey that eventually leads to him becoming a good person, which is like the chasing the Avatar journey. But Azula has never left the Fire Nation up until she's given the special task
yeah.
at the end of the first season and the beginning of the second season. Like that's when Azula leaves, and that she's like gone for like a month,
Oh
and then
yeah,
she
you're right.
and then she goes back to the Fire Nation by the time that it's like the Book of Fire, the third book. So like you see, nothing really changes for her. A lot changes for Zuko, and
And she also
he's
is like with like her other Fire Nation
right.
friends
Well,
on
yes, yeah, 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 yeah,
so
yeah.
like
All
she's
that
just
too.
kind of surrounded like I mean, even though Zuko did have like the crew for a period of time, he did have Iroh and that was his guidance and like that was the person he was
Right,
mainly with.
right. But yeah, so then when he comes back in the third season to the Fire Nation, and he's like accepted in the Sidekin, and he's at the war room with all the generals who've probably never left the Fire Nation except for maybe to go to war, but they've never interacted with anyone outside of like war
That's
context.
why Zuko was
He's
like,
like,
I know the Earth Kingdom people.
yeah, they would never yield because they're like their lives already are like they're poor, they live in farms, and like they have dealt with 10,000 other things previous to today because the war's been going on for 100 years. Like they're not going to just stop because you want them to. And then that's like kind of leads to the eventual like doomsday plan basically that Ozai comes up with that they then thwart. um but it's his understanding that allows him to see that, and then also see the error of his ways when he's like, damn, like now they're going to do something very evil with the information that I provided. I need to create a world where the things that I know only help the people that I know them about.
Yeah, and imagine if Zuko wasn't there. They wouldn't, I mean, I'm sure, I mean, I don't think Azula would have been like, yeah, the Earth people are strong, they won't yield. She would just be
Yeah.
like, oh, more military, or like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know, burn something. But like,
Right.
Zuko knew like truly how to get to the people because like he was like
Yeah.
living, he was like truly trying to like live alongside the people. Ah,
Exactly.
a boy. I do like him a lot.
Yeah. I do like Zuko. I think in comparison, I hate when people are like people obviously love Zuko, but then are like shit on Azula for no reason because
Yeah.
they're the same person with very different experiences. Like
Mhm.
if Zuko was a girl and Azula was a boy, and Zuko was better at firebending and Azula was bad at firebending, their lives would be literally just flipped. Like that's the only
Yeah,
real difference between those two. And so when you say like, oh yeah, like Azula's just an awful bitch, but then like Zuko's like, oh my god, the prince like of my dreams, like he's so attractive and like he's so charming and he like makes such a big decision and
he
like
also isn't
he's
charming. Like he
at
like
all,
he
at
doesn't know
all.
how to talk to people. Like I don't know
He
where
was.
anyone got like the charming part. Like yeah, he's like
We just
cute
really
like
liked brooding
animated
people in
character.
'07 because of like Twilight. Like that's
This
it.
man
Like
does not know how to talk to people. Like if you met him, like if you like tried to flirt with him, he would like I don't know, like the scene where like that girl in the Earth Kingdom kisses him
yeah,
and he like is
yeah.
like, "Oh, here's this coupon." Like that's what would happen to
Yeah,
you.
literally. He's stupid. I think part of what they do though is they manufacture his desirability. And so like Zuko is seen as attractive because there's like 4 or 5 different women over the course of the series that like him, and then eventually he gets in a relationship with one of them who is his previous girlfriend. But
I mean like I don't know cuz Sokka has like he has like two like love interests, but
yeah,
he isn't seen as like the attractive one as compared to
no.
Zuko.
I think because I think Sokka's very goofy personality wise and like Zuko's cool.
Yeah.
Um And then with Azula, though, like with the Ember Island episode, which I will never stop talking about because it's probably one of my favorite episodes,
He's
one of
iconic.
the most interesting for sure. Like she's at a party and she's like, "Oh, together we will rule in domination of this party." And it's like, girl, chill out, like just chill. But it's clear that
He
people like her
can't.
because she's hot, right? Like because people like Ty Lee because she's hot because she's wearing the clothes that she's wearing in that scene, and people are walking up to her because of that reason. Um, and like Azula like judges Ty Lee for like having so many men around her because she's like, oh, that's the sign of a weak woman, basically. And it's like,
She just
girl,
thinks
you
she's
just
sexy.
are awkward. Like,
Yeah, her like Zuko is also very awkward when he was like interacting with people. Azula is
yeah,
just like a little meaner about it.
right, right. Like Zuko's dumb. Azula's like, no, we will plan how to figure out how to dominate this social.
I will create something
God.
that will allow me to thrive socially.
Yeah,
Zuko will
I'm
be
about to
like,
make.
I'm
I'm
gonna
going to.
practice. Zuko's like, I'm gonna practice talking to this frog.
Yeah. Um, Azula's like, I'm going to make an environment that is so hierarchical.
Yeah, yeah, she really said that.
um, yeah, honestly, I hate what the comics did to Azula's plot lines, like
Yeah, I told you
post
that
this
yesterday.
season. I read up on them on Wikipedia. I'm like, these suck. In my head, Azula and Ty Lee are dating, and Ty Lee has like gotten Azula to stop being so
I mean, I
the
think
way she is.
I don't know, like I like Maya and Azula together, and I like Kai. Like I like Maya and Azula a lot, and I mean I also like Maya with Zuko, but like
Yeah.
I think that would be like an amazing like throuple.
I think here's what I think. I think Zuko and Mai being like the emo plus the goth, like
Yeah,
emo BF plus goth GF that we all crave. And so that's
yeah,
why I'm like fine with keeping that canon relationship canon.
I love
But
that.
like Tylee and Azula is just very um like Azula's like clearly very dominant and very jealous, and I feel like any relationship that they had like Azula would be like, "That's my girlfriend. Don't fucking talk to her. I'll kill you," which I approve of.
I do
Um,
like that. I do
but
like if they were dating in the Amber Island episode, like she would like firebend everyone.
literally, she would lightning bend any man who looked at her, like just dead on arrival. Um,
I do like that. I like that a lot.
yeah. But like Ty Lee would like have a lot of like love and affection, but also like power and control over Azula, because then she'd be like, "No, but you gotta chill out, babe. Like, there's people around.
Babe,
Tone it down a
stop.
little bit." Yeah. Um, of course, we just talk about this. I just talk. I all I care about is Azula. I do not care about Zuko. Uh, you also wanted to say something about the comparison between like Zuko and then like when they made Legend of Korra, like they made Mako basically like Zuko but
Yes.
boring.
I'm 2 episodes into Legend of Korra and I met Mako and I'm just like, he is just
Unimpressed.
wannabe Zuko. He just wannabe Zuko. Like he's broody
Useless
and
man.
mean. But actually,
Yeah,
Zuko isn't even mean. Zuko is
yeah,
just like I don't know, controlling and stressed out about other things. But Mako
yeah,
is just straight up mean and like
yeah,
he's not interesting about it because like Azula is mean, but she's amazing one-liners and she's so witty. And
yeah.
like Mako's just like, I'm a jerk.
Yeah, yeah. It's also interesting to see
Like I'm a
how,
jerk to my brother. Like
yeah,
what?
it is interesting to me to see how like nuanced Avatar the Last Airbender was, and then go to Korra, and it's um, like because like Sokka is bumbling, but he's not. That's not his entire identity.
Yeah,
And so
he
I
has
think
some
like
like intelligence.
so like you get a lot of like tropes about what people from the different nations are like in the in Avatar the Last Airbender, and then in Legend of Korra you get like people only exist as tropes. And so like Mako is a firebender, which means he's moody and broody and mean. Because Azula and Zuko combined is moody and broody and mean. And
Yeah,
then
that's true.
Korra is like bumbling country bumpkin from Bumbleland because she's Southern Water Tribe. And like that's her defining character trait for the first like 3 seasons. Um, Bolin is like funny, goofy, fun time guy because like all people from the Earth Kingdom are like fun, like you know what I mean, like non-serious type, like
Yeah.
round people, and it's like you really just didn't care about this second season, did you? Like you just did not care about the second series that you created. You didn't care about because like it's just clear that they did not put nearly as much nuance or anything into like I love Legend of Korra, but I think the characters are a lot less nuanced than Avatar the Last Airbender is because they like all serve one function always. Like because in Atla it's like Katara is funny sometimes, Aang's funny sometimes, Sokka's funny sometimes, Zuko's funny sometimes, Azula can be funny. Like, but in Legend of Korra, it's like always Bolin being stupid. It's always so and so being so and so. It's always like it's a lot more cut and dried. I think.
Mhm.
Sorry, I just went on a rant.
Oh no, yeah. But yeah, on that note, Dan Azula. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Zuko is interesting and we hate toxic masculinity.
Yes.
But also Stan Azula.
Yeah. Stanzula. Um. Yeah. Thank you for coming to this week's meeting of Monster Fuckers Anonymous. And remember, can we do it at the same time?
Yeah, let's do it.
It okay.
Always.
And remember, so okay. And remember, it's always okay to be a monster fucker.
Fucker.
Okay.
Yay.
Bye.